Awesome. Well, I guess we could start. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Um, I'm MG. I'm MG Belaina. I'm a third-year philosophy student here at Tyndale, and I'm very, very excited on behalf of Sophia Society that we're all here together. I think this is our first in-person event since COVID, and this is very awesome. So yeah, yeah. And for those of you guys that are live streaming or watching the recorded version of this, well, really would have loved for you guys to be here. And hopefully next time we'll be having that as well. But yeah, thank you all for coming. We're very excited. I'll let my other co-host introduce himself, and we can carry on as well.
Yeah, hello, my name is Rafael Sakaria. I'm a third-year Biblical Studies and Theology major, and I'm minoring in philosophy. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Connor Sweetman with us. So,
yeah. So welcome. Our event is called Sorry, I blanked on it. Reviving the Christian Imagination, a conversation with Connor Sweetman. Connor Sweetman is a Tyndale alumnus and founder and editor of Christianity Today's Ecstasis magazine. He has graduated from Tyndale in 2017 with a Bachelor's of Arts in English Literature, and also went on to do his master's degree in York. And he'll tell us more about himself later, but we know that now he lives here in Toronto with his wife, Hannah, and we're very excited to talk to him, ask him, and pick his brain up a little bit about literature and the arts and the conversations that happen. And so thank you so much, Connor, for coming here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we'll start off just by getting to know you a little bit more. So I know there's a lot of people in the crowd. We were getting to know you a little bit before we began, but I'm going to throw you the most open-ended, broad interview question that can be asked. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Connor.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe up to ecstasis, and what do you think would be important for us and people that are going to be listening to this conversation to know as a background before we get into ecstasis and the magazine and all of that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ecstasis was born in these hallways in a dorm room upstairs. Maybe I might have been out of it by then. But actually, yeah, it was at the old campus, Valley Connor, so not here, but still. Essentially, I studied English literature here, and it was a wonderful experience. I have many professors who are still here that I always credit whenever I talk about just really opening up the worlds of the arts and literature to me and realizing that kind of so much of the experiences that I'd had throughout with just that powerful, transcendent experience where you're just kind of lifted outside of yourself and in a really powerful experience through the arts. I started kind of having a vocabulary to understand why that was, what the human impulse was, what the Christian impulse was, that kind of contributed to that desire in me. And I am an Enneagram 4, so it's definitely, I know not everyone can kind of always be craving that deep transcendent experience, but I think most of us do to some degree or another and reach that in different ways, whether that's through the arts or a party or community or serving in your church or just whatever, that reaching for something outside of yourself, I think, is so common to our humanity. So anyways, I studied here for 5 years. I took an extra year where I got to go to Oxford for a semester and study Shakespeare for 3 months. And that was just really cool to have that depth that I was experiencing inside kind of reflected in a geographical location with so much history and wonder. And I just remember working at a cafe there and just looking at the walls and thinking how many, it sounds so cheesy, but how many incredible stories and ideas these walls had heard in the midst of just such a incredible university with so many people that had really changed the world. So that was really beautiful. But ironically enough, in the midst of my studies at Tyndale, kind of middle years, I actually did go through like a crisis of faith. And I know that's ironic being at a Christian university, but the conflicting realities of a deepening appreciation for the arts and the deeper parts inside myself in kind of collision with a lack of, well, I had a few friends going around like similar kind of deconstruction is the word now commonly used, but I think just kind of a community of questioning, and then questioning inside myself, and then also just not actually knowing what it means to follow God as a mature adult. Obviously, you know it when you're a kid to a certain extent if you grow up in that setting, but I think it was a really good time to understand what I hoped to be and what the person I wanted to be. That was kind of being taught to me through university classes, realizing how much was possible with a human life, but then trying to reconcile almost that worldly ambition with what I knew was at my core a spiritual desire. So anyways, I feel like that's kind of a jumbled idea, but that is kind of what led to the origination of ecstasis, kind of those conflicting realities of loving that transcendent experience of the arts and literature, but finding that so much of what I was experiencing that through didn't have Christ as the ultimate creative core of that. And so when I started realizing, oh, there are people, there are magazines, there are organizations that are invested in this deeper work of merging really excellent craft with a Christ-infused core, that just really inspired me. And so that's kind of near the end of my Tyndale experience, that's kind of when the idea popped in my mind. And again, like looking back on it, it's crazy that it's where it is now, because it really was just truly a hobby and kind of something I thought would be fun to do on my own and get some friends involved with. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, because a lot of times Christian art has been for a long time, and everyone has said this, but I've heard someone say specifically about Christian artistry, and currently, especially over the past 30 years, is like he called it cheap artistry, and there's not as much sort of given into the excitement and the transcendental sort of beauty and all of that, and so that's very cool. I've personally found ecstasis to be a perfect hub to read in and also get inspired truly and get motivated and sort of see hope and see the light. And so thank you for that. But,
yeah. I want to talk about what you just said quickly. I think it's so easy for everyone to kind of look at the landscape of, say, Christian film or whatever. And it is very cheesy, very, not even low budget. They have high budgets, but it's evidently not as to the level of Hollywood productions, per se. But I think that it's very easy to kind of trash on that and say, why aren't any Christians doing any good work? But ironically enough, I think I really have, in my experience with ecstasis and being in these communities, I see that there are people that take it very seriously, take their faith very seriously, take their craft very seriously, but there aren't as many kind of avenues and, I guess, platforms for people to, I guess, become financially viable, to really make an actual life out of it. So in my small way, that is kind of, I want to focus more on the people doing the really good work, because there are people, rather than just kind of trashing on how bad Christian art is these days. Because if you really look, there is incredible stuff.
Yeah. Next question is, what necessarily, I guess, they might not be inspirations or sort of things that you looked up to, but were there any sort of movements or different things that you paid attention to, organizations that have, I guess, paved the way, in a sense, in your own mindset to sort of be inspired and be like, I need to do something like this?
Right. I do remember I was in my dad's office just over there, and I remember seeing a copy of Image magazine, or Image Journal, which is, sorry, and Chipotle for dinner. But it was kind of the tagline of the image is art, mystery, and faith, I think. But essentially, I had never seen or realized that there were just that, what I just talked about, that excellence of craft merged with people of deep faith. And so when I saw that magazine, I think that is kind of where the idea was first inspired in me, and I only realized it much later, but just seeing that there were communities building around this and being published. And I remember like growing up, I would just kind of have the throwaway line of, I want to be a publisher, or I want to be in publishing as a kid. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but now it's kind of crazy that that's exactly where I've ended up without even realizing what it was. And I think that image journal was kind of a major touch point. And then there were a few, even ironic, I know I'm saying ironically enough, but even something as lame as social media, Twitter. I think on Twitter you see people really gathering around affinities and things that they might not have in their real life communities. And so I realized, oh, there's a whole world of like very intense Christian writers who are doing what I'd love to do in 10, 15 years. And so kind of meandering into that and realizing Christianity Today, even before I was a part of it, I was loving kind of the literary side of that with, they used to have a publication called Books and Culture, so that was another inspiration. So yeah, I mean, just kind of anything that was combining the academic depth that I was learning about in school, but then building, or not even building, maintaining a community around that. But I was finding that many of those publication organizations, they tended to draw an older audience, so to speak. So it was kind of maybe 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe some late 30s, who really were passionate about that stuff and were building these communities. But because our generation is much more kind of visually aesthetically inclined, like we really care about design, we really care about how things are packaged and put together on a visual level, and I think social media is kind of to blame for that, for both good and bad. But I was finding that I loved the content, I loved the essays, I loved the poetry, whatever, but I wasn't immersed in the visual experience of it. So the places I just mentioned are all amazing, but they weren't really resonating with more of my younger generational aesthetic impulses.
You mentioned your dad, and I'm gonna make a joke that was it took a long time to come up with, but I didn't make it. Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know, Connor Sweetman is George Sweetman's son, and I guess we had your father here with us for the last event that we did on the liberal arts and the importance of it all, and I guess his love for the liberal arts has been apparent in your life. You guys can laugh now.
Oh my gosh. I didn't get that for a few seconds, but I appreciate it.
But no, yeah. But no, I really do want to ask you though, I guess, how has that sort of start towards desiring something more aesthetically pleasing or something cool and hip, I guess, for the younger audience, someone also in your age range, has that started, did it just start like as a passion? Was it just a little bit of an interest? Or did you think and consider this, no, I'm going to take it to the long haul, I'm going to try to perfect this properly?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's my aesthetic, impulse has kind of been honed through, I loved drawing and painting growing up, so I've always kind of been very visually inclined, and I've always cared about that stuff. But when I first, when I look back on some of the cover ideas I had for the first issue, it was very bad graphic design. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I cared enough that I kept trying and kind of self-teaching, and so yeah, when I started, it really was just kind of a labor of pure love. Like I just loved tinkering around with it, tinkering around with design principles that I knew through even high school classes and my own artistic, like drawing and painting and stuff. But it only kind of transitioned to more of a broader pursuit when I started, I think, and this is kind of veering off a little bit, but so much of what I wanted to capture with Ecstasis was that, like, late night kind of, you stumble across something like a blog or a song or a movie or something, and it just is like an overwhelming resonance where it's like, wow, this is like next level. I feel so in tune with what is happening on the screen or whatever, and what's inside of me, and it just kind of opens that longing. And I know C.S. Lewis talked about that idea of like Sehnsucht, this longing for a home that you'll never, like that homesickness for heaven, essentially. And so I knew that I loved experiencing that through different things in books or movies or online or blog or whatever, or a song. And so coming back to it, my aesthetic impulse was always trying to replicate that experience for someone else, trying to kind of create a place where someone could stumble across an article that's like, wow, that resonates so much, and I didn't expect to be feeling that deeply right now, but it is just a powerful experience with God and just a really high quality artistic experience. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does.
Yeah, I think that leads well into the next question, which is more just to introduce people who have no idea what Ecstasis is. I mean, we mentioned it's a magazine, but what would they expect to see in an issue of Ecstasis? Like you mentioned articles, and what else? Yeah.
Yeah, so I framed it around, and it just kind of, it wasn't very intentional, but it was just kind of all my interests at the time. So I have, the original tagline was, art meets academia, kingdom meets culture, or kingdom meets earth, actually, was the original. And so essentially I wanted to kind of dip into each pond of those different realms. So basically the different types of content are essays, like longer form, kind of reflective, but also not purely experiential. Like I wanted to have some historical weight and historical heft to it as well. So essays that are reflective, but also drawing upon our literary and cultural heritage as Christians. And then poetry, and I have seen kind of the poetry side of things really explode over the past year. It's really kind of going into those communities, and everyone's telling each other about it. So the poetry submissions have just kind of gone through the roof lately, and I'm really proud of how that side of it's shaping up. And then finally, essays, poetry, and profiles. So literary profiles of, I guess we don't want to use that word, but celebrities in kind of the Christian artistic world. So I recently just wrapped up an interview with, well, I didn't interview it, but I got to meet him and set it up with Jonathan Rumi from The Chosen, who's Jesus. And then Dante Bowe from Maverick City Music and people like that. So it's been really cool getting to bring what I really admire in a New Yorker profile, which is really well written, really deep and personal, but also touches on wider themes and wider ideas, and then ties it all together in a really pretty bow. So I don't find that many Christian outlets have that kind of a profile, so that's also a focus. So essays, poetry, and profiles.
That's really cool. Do you want to ask the question about how, the artists get the pull of the art?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan already. I've read a few of the articles and the poetry, and I'm just fascinated, I guess, on how did you come across some of these artists? I know, for example, I've read an interview with John Mark McMillan, or I know one of the writers is Strahan, who I've loved for a really long time. And so I was just fascinated to see, whoa, this is someone I know of.
Yeah.
That came out of my university, interacting with artists that I truly admire and that I think do great work. And so we know that it's if it's just through submissions, or how did you find that way to like gain that traction and interest? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's been really sweet to see. But essentially, I boil it down to like a youthful naivete. I just kind of reached out to everyone back in the day. Like when I first started, I just kind of reached out to all my favorite artists and musicians and writers and just said, hey, I'm making this thing. Do you want to submit something? And most of them said no, and that's totally understandable because I had nothing to show for it. But it was the kindness, honestly, of like 2 or 3 people that said yes and I guess saw some potential. And I have this one writer named Karen Swallow Pryor, who's kind of like big in the evangelical Twitter space. And she had no idea who I was, but she wrote just a really quick thing for me on Flannery O'Connor at the beginning. And it's not about name dropping, but at the same time, it is really helpful to have 1 or 2 people that people can say, oh, okay, this gives some legitimacy to the project. Yeah, sure, I'll be a part of it. And so I think, 1 or 2 people out of the kindness of their own heart said yes, and then started learning how to interview people. The first few times I interviewed the musicians that I so admired, I was absolutely terrified. It was like, I remember my voice being super shaky on the calls. Like, it was just terrible, but it was so helpful to learn that they really are just people. Like, they really, truly are, they have the same expectation. I don't even know. Like, you can treat them like a friend if you feel like you could be a friend with them. So that was really good learning that no matter how, like you're saying, oh wow, these artists I really respect, someone from Tyndale is talking to them. It is cool when I think about it like that, but at the same time, like at a certain point, you have to stop thinking about like everyone as kind of a social tier or anything. Otherwise, it just gets too weird. So yeah, I think it was a combination of my boldness to reach out when I had nothing to show for it, but then as the kind of snowball started going, actually honing the skills to learn how to write a good pitch email, learn how to interview people so that I didn't feel like it was just like they didn't know what they were doing. So just inviting people into that experience and then kind of following through with it was very important skills.
That's very, very cool and admirable for like, and I'm not saying it mainly because I'm reading all these different artists that I know of or anything like that. It's truly, I guess, a dedication and the love, and as you said, the sort of naivete that sparks and that interest, and I think that's what the Christian imagination and the desire to know more and to understand what's transcendentally true and beautiful is, and I really admire that. So, yeah.
And people can sense it too, like as in, even though it was very small once upon a time, and it still overarchingly is small, but people can sense when you are just doing something out of a real passion, and they want to be a part of it if it's truly like with, passionate motives.
I'm curious, like, I'm sure we'll try to get into some questions regarding like maybe this starting and entrepreneurial side and doing all of that, because I'm sure there's some people and students that may want to do something similar. Maybe it's not a magazine, but some other project in the future, and you've maybe paved this way, or you have experience, and they'll for sure will try to get some of your insight and expertise on that. But like, what would your pitches be like to these people? Like, what would you how would you contact them? Was it social media, direct messages, or emails, or managers? And like, what was your pitch like? Yeah.
It's all of the above. It really is kind of a scattershot approach where you find their website, you might find a manager's email, you might find their email, depending on, mostly writers you can contact them directly, and most of the time they are very kind and willing to give you a tiny bit of time, but you have to make it worth their time. That is like the key. As for musicians, I don't like work. I've had to learn how to work with agencies like a lot more because they really do put themselves in front because musicians especially are asked constantly to do things. So it's interesting now, and I'm not going to go on a tangent, but now that I'm so much more busy, like trying to juggle so many different things and trying to bring it to fruition on so many different projects kind of all the time for Ecstasis and other Christianity Today stuff, I'm way more aware of just how busy people are and how valuable it is even just getting any kind of a response. Like the fact that someone would just take like the 5 minutes to reply to you, you have to really honor that and show that you are so appreciative and that you want to make it worth their time. But yeah, essentially, it was websites, like you can find most general emails, but then surprisingly, you can find like Instagram, because Ecstasis is mostly on Instagram. That's where I have, I guess, the most credit that people can say, oh, okay, this is something I might want to be a part of. So whether it's, through messages there, but so often you really do have to follow up, because like, every inbox, things are going to slip through. So just that persistence without being annoying can go a long way. And people that I wrote off as never wanting to be a part of it because they didn't reply, you ask them, hey, just want to check in on this, and surprisingly often they'll say, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I missed it the first time, or he's serious enough about it that he actually wants me to be a part of it, that he'd follow up, so I'm going to give him some time of day. So that, I would just say, like, persistence without being infringing or annoying is very key.
How many follow-ups before you say, okay, I'm going to stop?
I'd say the third follow-up is the last one, for me.
Well, I know we've asked you a lot of, I guess, the practical questions on how did it happen? How did you get here? Or, and we'll have a few more, but I'm interested to know, how has it been since, I know this past year you said was much more busier. How has it been for your own, journey or interest into the arts and into the academia and all these different venues that you, at the start, was hoping to explore more? Mm-hmm. Has the busyness of it all, has everything just clouded over, or maybe it has, but still, where do you find, the joy and those late night music videos that you're like, oh, right. Where do you find those?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I think it's kind of double-edged, where overarchingly, like, there's almost like a plateau that happens where before, and even like 6 months before I was working at CT, I had just started a new job at in a financial startup marketing company, and that was kind of my move to say, okay, this is my passion project, but I'm never actually going to make a living out of this. So I'm going to actually try to get like a more responsible adult job, and so in that time, I would treasure the times where I was on the subway and got to read, catch up on my articles that I'd saved, or listen to a new album, or whatever. And it would be much more mountainous in terms of the peaks and the lows of my experience. Those times would be so treasured, and I love them. But then my day-to-day life was way more not satisfying in the artistic and even spiritual regard. Now, it is way more plateaued, as in, because I'm so immersed in it all the time, it's almost like I'm never going up for a breath of fresh air of that experience, because it's just constant. But at the same time, I look at my job now, and I'm so honored and blessed that I can do this, because I know it is on the more rare side. And I just look at my day-to-day, and I'm never tired of my job. I never want it to be 5. When it's 4 p.m., I'm like, crap, I only have an hour left to work on this. And so I'm just that's radically different than my life before, where it was kind of that low peak of day-to-day life, and then it was like, oh yes, I get to experience this. Now I don't get as high of the peak of aesthetic enjoyment, but I just never have that. Well, obviously everyone goes through low times, but it's just generally more satisfying holistically.
So like as an editor, maybe I'll throw 2 questions into this one. What does that look like, being the editor of Ecstasis magazine? And then how has that changed with the adoption into Christianity today? And what's that like, working at Christianity today and like that relationship?
Yeah.
Even how did that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was, as I mentioned, I was like 4 months into the job at this place called Revenue Management Labs. So like super not my vibe, but I was just doing it because I thought I should. And it was good. Like it taught me some good stuff. Anyways, while I was there, I got an email from Timothy Dalrymple, who was the new CEO/editor at CT. He had been there for a year, and he emailed me out of the blue. Karen Swallow Pryor, who I had mentioned wrote for me early on, he knew her, so he asked. So, long story short, essentially the director, and it feels like so weird being so self-touting, but anyways, the director of philanthropy at CT had come across Ecstasis, and actually her friend, and this is kind of funny, her friend sent her a copy of it for like a Christmas gift, and that exact order, I'm very aware that I almost didn't fulfill it properly because there was like something messed up in the PayPal account or the shipping, I can't remember. I'm not a very logistical person, so pre-CT, the shipping and the ordering side, it still worked, but it was definitely a lot more laggy and delayed. So I remember that exact order was almost not fulfilled, and it wouldn't have got to the director of philanthropy, which is, I'm so thankful that I think God made a way for it to happen. And it eventually got to her, and she loved it and showed it to Tim, and was kind of like the cheerleader for it, and said, we need to get on a call with this magazine. And so when we kind of arranged that call, I remember taking a screenshot of the email and sending it to my wife Hannah, because I was like, I literally can't believe that I just got this email, because it kind of was a dream come true, literally. Whenever people would ask what I could imagine, like what would be the best case scenario with Ecstasis, I'd be like, gets bought out by some Christian journalistic organization and they buy me out. And that's exactly kind of what happened. And when they realized, CT, that it was a one-person operation with like a little bit of volunteer help, they said, hey, we want Ecstasis, but we also like want your creative direction abilities. So since going there, it's been amazing. They've kind of given me a lot of the same exact autonomy that I had before to just keep doing what I was doing. Any new ideas they're very open to. But in addition to kind of doing Ecstasis 50% of my day, they also have brought me into a few other awesome projects, the next of which is called The Globe Issue, coming out in December, which is kind of like, it's kind of the aesthetic, the Ecstasis ethos paired with the mission of CT to lift up the sages and storytellers of the global church. So it's just been crazy that they are allowing me to kind of learn as I go and letting me implement the same vision that I have for Ecstasis in some of their other projects and work. So overall, it's just been an extremely satisfying and healthy relationship that I'm super thankful about. And it all started with that random email.
That's good. Ecstasis has still stayed your baby.
It is, totally. Unless I leave in 3 years, then it's not. Just kidding.
Oh, but that's amazing. It's truly I can see how much of a dream come true, or like, satisfaction it is. I wanted to touch up on something that you mentioned earlier about having a minor crisis of faith or a little deconstruction moment here at Tyndale while studying. I think a lot of students can relate to it I for sure can as well. In moments where you just get so caught up with all the different things, there's loads of information and exciting things, and the concept that you are now going to be an adult, or like, you know, a full, like, pledged adult, that's amazing. I get a whole thing. But I guess what in that process has changed, or what through the process has changed from that young boy who's questioning and sort of wavered, and maybe it hasn't, it's all good, but I guess coming now, because you're mentioning how faithful God has been, and even letting that pass, and so how has that been sort of, I guess, a spiritual theme in your life, but how do you see it, I guess, fit into also academia, or what should students focus on really when it comes to trying times or lots of things that we go through?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a two-pronged answer. I think, first of all, on the more academic side, it was definitely, I guess, kind of that classic moment of realizing at any university how much thinking and arguments have been put forward throughout history, kind of against our faith, but also for it, and just kind of your eyes are being opened up to, okay, this is not the only way of thinking. And I think that is shaking for everyone, but at the same time, if you really take it upon yourself to kind of really dive into the riches of Christian tradition and the realization that people have been asking the same questions for millennia. I don't know if that's the right number, but people have been asking the same questions for a long, long time. And if you have the genuine pursuit, you can kind of find so much of your own struggles and your own questions reflected in the literary and just kind of theological tradition of our ancestors and our past. And so there was kind of that dip of realizing, okay, there's more perspectives out there, and getting shaken by that, and kind of being in a community that was almost getting shaken by that, but then also realizing that if you go deep enough and you take it upon yourself, you can you can find extremely solid, rich, deep, powerful arguments and realities for our faith that you can stand on and you can build your life on and faith around. And I remember, I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but I remember the quote, a little studying can lead you away from God. No. A little intelligence can lead you away from God, but a lot of intelligence leads you to God. And that's very reductionistic, and that's not actually a quote, but I can't remember. But essentially, I just realized that a little bit of research can make you scared and question, but then immersing yourself in these questions can lead to very satisfying ends. The second thing, I think, is how much of my identity was based on communal life in whatever form that was. So I wasn't actually practicing deep spiritual discipline. I wasn't doing what we all know we should be doing and reading my Bible every single day and spending time in prayer every single day. I was just kind of in the environment that we all knew we were kind of doing that, but ultimately, like, some of us, and including me, weren't taking ownership of our own spiritual development and our own genuine building up of our faith, and even serving. Like, I realized how self-centered I was in a lot of ways. Like, I wasn't actually giving of myself to build up the wider church and community around me. And I think a lot of that is, like, only I can recognize that internally. So yeah, I think it's the two-pronged approach of take your academics very seriously, take the realities that have gone before us super seriously, and that's what I think Extasis really tries to do, is bring that rich tradition, but then also, yeah, really take your soul seriously. Like, understand that you're being counterformed every day by culture, and so it's up to you to actually be serious about your faith and actually grow in the love of the Lord or not. And if you don't, if you're not putting that work in, or not even work, if you're not putting the time and relationship in, then you will find yourself far from God.
I'm just curious, like, with what you're mentioning now, what's your hope or with Ecstasis Magazine's influence in, our world and our society and influencing Christians and non-Christians and the impact that Ecstasis has or that you want it to have? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds so like Puritan-esque, and I think if I heard this, even in university, I'd be like, cringe, but I realize that, yeah, like as I'm saying, culture and the arts and just generally like, and we say arts, but like Netflix and the music we listen to, it does, if you're not careful and if you're not actually aware of what you're digesting, then you are either being built up or you're slowly withering, honestly. And so I couldn't find in my time of like searching and aesthetic awakening the things that were deeply satisfying on an aesthetic level, but also deeply satisfying on a spiritual level. So I would love if Ecstasis can be a place that people who are wired like me and beyond me to need that transcendence and that deep experience of life and reality to be foundationalized in the truth and the love of Christ. If Ecstasis can be that for other people and they can stumble across that and just have a beautiful, transcendent spiritual experience with the Lord, then that is the goal.
Do you think Ecstasis will expand into different mediums? So like we were talking a bit about movie production, music. I know it's a magazine right now, but it's very digital as well in our digital era. Like, moving forward.
Yeah. I'm trying to experiment with more like interview, like video content, as lame as that is, but I have to, Instagram for photography is definitely on its way out, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can I take what Ecstasis does well and bring it into new mediums without losing kind of its heart. So I don't think it'll go into like full-fledged movie production, but I think if I can help to build an awareness of those projects and even funding and building models where people who are really into that kind of thing on an excellent level can find a place to be interviewed and feature their work and find like-minded audiences, then I would love that.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit to, I guess, what you were mentioning with the arts. I remember listening to a podcast with an artist I loved listening to named Andy Squires, and he was talking about this, and the podcaster is also, I forgot his name, Deep Talks is the podcast name, and he's talking a lot about the importance literature has in our lives, whether we know it or not, and ranging from Netflix movies, the books that we read in school, to memes. There's an overload of literature just being pumped at, especially young, men and women, and we're thinking constantly according to what we're receiving, and we're always being fed on a lot of these different things. And I remember Andy Squires said, similar to what you said, just stop for a second and build your soul. Just continue praying, continue going to church, serve just because you have to do it, and eventually you'll get better. But also I think there's an importance, and perhaps Ecstasis does this, and I'm asking you, how well do you think you are going to be doing this now through CT and being able to work things out through that? How well do you think you could serve as a secondary? Obviously the primary thing is that we build our souls through the constant building of our spirit, but also secondary to that in a constant sort of reminder, no, there's good art out there that you can consume, or there's good ways to consume secular art or skewed art, and how to intake it in a biblical or in a godly manner, honoring the artist's desire and all that. And so how can you see that sort of be a role?
That's a multifaceted question. Andy Squires is actually currently writing an essay for Ecstasis, which is very exciting.
That's
but
awesome.
Basically, I don't know I understand completely what you're saying, but ultimately what's coming to mind is kind of the pursuit of like humanization. So whatever like I'm trying to publish, I want to like get a accurate and powerful picture of, as cheesy as the Imago Dei in us all, like the core of God in us and how He's working around us and through us. And so whether you're interacting with explicitly Christian work or not, I think, if you approach it with like the awareness and pursuit of humanization of the subject and the artist, and just less dehumanizing impulses and more towards that holistic vision of who they, I don't know, I'm not answering it well, but yeah, just the quest towards humanizing whatever you're interacting with, whether it's Christian or not.
Yeah, awesome. What is an advice you can give us, students of Tyndale? Well, we're a wide range of like first to fourth, but I guess what can you give young people who are aspiring, perhaps not necessarily to go into, biblical work or going into mission or church work, but just are interested in what we do? Because that's been a theme that we've been focusing on this year, the liberal arts and the fascination and the beauty that we are able to experience in what we study. And so, what is a piece of advice that you have for young students like us?
Yeah, I'm asked sometimes if people can kind of be a part of Ecstasis in any way, and I welcome it when I can kind of help them be a part of it. But ultimately, like, what I have realized through my own journey and through talking to people who might see something and want to be a part of it, but they haven't actually not shown that they can, but they have nothing that people can plug into and say, yeah, you'd actually be really good at being a part of this. Let me hire you for a gig, or let me get you involved in this project. And so I think what I would just recommend and what I would advise is kind of have that, I guess, bravado to create something rather than nothing. Like, start building on your body of work, on your portfolio, and it doesn't have to be the final end, and it doesn't have to be exactly what you want it to be at that point. You have to start putting something out for the people that you eventually want to work for or eventually want to be involved with to see and understand what your capacity is, what your skill set is. And then even through doing that, you'll realize your own impulses and where you're drawn to more. Like, I used to think that I was almost purely an editor, and I would like edit, when I was at Tyndale, I would edit my friends' papers, and even not even my friends, I would like get hired to edit people's papers, and it was satisfying to a certain degree, but throughout my journey of doing all that editing, I realized I'm much more of, I love curating. Like, I love creating a structure that people who are really good at what they do can give their work to or submit their work to, and have something that we can all be proud of. And so I wouldn't have kind of got to that place unless I spent 2 years just kind of editing every weeknight. And I still like doing it, but it's not my ultimate goal. So I think none of us know what our ultimate goal is, so really just kind of trying out. And I think the artist or the author, Austin Kleon, he talks about showing your work, and it's just so important to like not do it all and then present this finished product, but really kind of show your process, show your journey, and then people will slowly gravitate towards it in the realm that you're interested in. So just start doing something.
I kind of want to go back to, we kind of spoke about, it's kind of in relation to what we're talking about here, but your education, your liberal arts education, like MG said, our last event was on, the value of the liberal arts. And I mean, clearly you could say that your Bachelor's of Arts degree has come in probably it's very handy in what you do today. But all in all, your liberal arts education, how has that influenced, your life and your career in ways that are maybe not so evident, like editing and writing in that sort of way? Where have you seen your liberal arts education like come in handy, or be like those moments where, wow, I'm so glad I did end up going to Tyndale and I did do that and I was exposed to those things and beyond my English literature degree?
Yeah, I think that I'm just trying to remember the name of the magazine. But anyways, there's this, I think Time magazine, when it first started, by Henry Luce. He wanted to kind of give a little snapshot of every sphere of life that you could digest in like 10 minutes, so that you'd have an overarching perspective on everything. And when I heard that, it did remind me of Tyndale and the liberal arts experience, where you kind of realize you're in a perpetual state of realizing how little you know, and the roof just keeps getting higher and higher for what you can learn and what is possible in life, but also like in your spirit, in your mind. So, because I think many professions, and even when you leave Tyndale and maybe you're working an office job, you kind of hit a plateau of what you can learn or how good you can get at something. But life is just kind of infinitely interesting and exciting when you realize that there's so many avenues that you can go down, and there's even in your own passion pursuits, like you don't have to be beholden to one form of knowledge or one sphere of culture or whatever. So I think the liberal arts education is just really good at constantly moving that marker for your own understanding back, as in like the more you know you don't know kind of thing. So that's where I would see the value, just continually showing up.
Yeah, it reminds me of something one of the professors, Dr. Melanie East, said, where it's, if you come to this school seeking this kind of education and think you're going to absorb some knowledge and leave and that'll be useful, it's not like that. It's a continual lifelong process of learning, different than some of your different kinds of degrees and such.
Yeah, I have one question. I don't think it's associated as much with our notes, but even though we have a little bit more time, I have one more question. And this is, I would say you could choose to answer it or not.
Sure.
I've just been interested and noticed how the audience for Ecstasis it's very wide range and different perspectives. And I can see how exciting it could get for a fundamental sort of evangelist, be like, oh my goodness, quality, like something that I could relate to, that's so cool. Or a super deconstructioned sort of, I guess, progressive Christian to be like, this is awesome as well, because it's relating the Bible and core beliefs and sort of integrating it into the arts. And so has there been at all any sort of tension? Because I've noticed there have been with a lot of different artists in the music or even writing currently, contemporary artists really face that trouble when they express their work and when they relate it a lot with the arts and academia. There's often room for, I guess, misunderstanding or a sort of desire to have them stand on one point, which I don't think a lot of people want to do, and they just want to be left alone. Has that been sort of something that you've been challenged by, perhaps after even coming into the bigger picture of CT and being addressed in that way as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I definitely have been challenged, and honestly, not as much as I would have expected in a funny way, because I think there is a general kind of respect for if people are doing really high quality work and really touching and deep work, they gravitate towards it even if they don't fully agree with it. But it's hard to basically sum up, but essentially I think going into CT has been helpful because they already have a pretty clear, I guess, doctrinal, like beautiful orthodoxy is their claim to fame. And so people understand that I actually, that was that's what first actually tipped Tim Dalrymple off to the fact that Ecstasis could be a good fit. Because even before I was associated with CT, I said in the About Us page that we aim to like feature work that is based on beautiful orthodoxy as defined by CT. And so I already had that kind of mission. So it was a very natural alignment, and most people kind of understand the implications of that. But I try to kind of give, I guess, like a two-tiered space where in, say, Instagram stories, anyone can participate, kind of anyone can say their piece, whatever. They're all contributing to the conversation, and there's no monitoring per se. But then obviously when we're publishing the work, we have to be semi-aware of like where the overarching theological realm that they come from. But there is kind of a self-sorting to a lot of degrees where people understand that they read it and they're like, okay, yes, I resonate with this, or no, it's not really my cup of tea. There have been a few times where I have had to say, sorry, I just don't think this is going to fit, and people 99.5% of the time have been extremely respectful and understanding and just kind of grateful that if you're willing to like talk with them about their work and why it might not be a good fit, then you're golden. It's when there's kind of you're shutting down the conversation and you're saying no, like with a firm fist, then I think that's where the bitterness and some resentment can come in. But yeah, overarchingly, it's been pretty, and people understand kind of where we're coming from.
So before we close, I'm just going to ask one more question. I know there's a submission spot on the website for people to actually submit work, if I understand correctly. Could you like elaborate on that, and what does that process look like? And maybe some students, you know, might want to start building their portfolio and have, you know, published in Ecstasis magazine in there.
Yeah, no, I would very much welcome that. And there have been Dr. Reynolds, he's written a piece in, I think, early on, issue 4 or so, or maybe issue 5. But yeah, no, and a few students too. So I very much welcome that. And if at first, I've had people submit something that at first glance, it doesn't look like it might fit, or it might even fit. It just sounds bad. Might not be at the caliber we're looking for, but we really, I have been able to work with people in casting the vision for what we're looking for, and then they take that back and it's like, oh, I've never actually written a piece like that. Let me rework this to see if it works. And actually, surprisingly often, it does work. So yeah, I'm open to kind of any essays that range from 1,000 to 3,000 words that kind of weave your daily life experience with a literary or artistic experience or tradition that kind of, just is personal, but also brings some of that historical weight behind it. So those are the essays that we look for. And then poetry, kind of, you can literally submit whatever type, form, however many you want. And then profiles, if you are a good profile writer and you have experience interviewing people, then I'm always very open to that as well. So you can email editor@ectasismagazine.com and I will get back to you.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, yeah. Who knows, maybe you're going to get some
I would love that.
Students now coming
I can't remember who, but I think I don't remember. But anyways, I have reached out to a few students from higher than you, but a little younger than me, who I just recognize are really good writers, and I want them a part of it, so the door is wide open to anyone who resonates.
That is cool, a cool ecosystem.
You're gonna get a few emails. Raphael 1, Raphael 2, Raphael.
Yeah.
All my attempts. I'm gonna send you some of the papers I've been writing for my classes too. Kill two birds with one stone.
Not going to publish your paper, sorry.
So, I guess, we'll bring things to a close, but what can we look forward to moving forward with Ecstasis? You know, maybe little sneak peeks you want to, bless us with, grace us with.
I did mention that we have some very cool profiles with Jesus, Jonathan Rumi, and Dante Bo, and a few other Maverick City music people. And just kind of, we're really doubling down on those profile elements because I haven't focused as much on them in the past, but there's been so many writers who want to write profiles, so I'm like, okay, cool. So that is a very cool rising prospect. And then honestly, what I'm most excited about right now, which is not directly Ecstasis related, but it is in the same ecosystem, is this Globe issue put out by CP in December. It's going to be a really cool merging of that kind of rich photography and not poetry, but like poetic style writing with just a view of what's happening in the church around the world on a deep contemplative level. So it's going to be really cool. So that's coming out in December.
Awesome.
We'll look forward to those things. Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up. I mean, it was an honor to sit and speak with you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And yeah, it's exciting to see what's going on with Ecstasis and the potential that is there. So we'll be keeping an eye out on that. And
beautiful. And I expect to see some projects from future Tyndale students, from Tyndale students in the future, because there really is a lot that you can do in the world. It sounds lame, but it's true.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming in, truly, because it's very, at a time like this, I think, for a lot of students, I could speak for myself, it's been just a really dry season of just, I'm like on a laptop, not even talking to a professor, and there's a lot of hope in being able to see people from the past, or people that has come before us, sort of do cool things that we admire and that we think are cool, and hopefully a lot of people admire it as much as I do, because I really do. And yeah, thanks for taking your time, sharing all this wisdom and information.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you for all our audience for coming in. This has been our first back again, sort of face-to-face interaction with Sophia Society. We have a few more other events coming up, and keep your eyes out for that. We'll do a few more, and it's going to be pretty exciting. So thanks all.
We'll see you guys at the next one. Have a great evening.